Hello friends, let us continue the discussion of the World Bank, a critical premise by economist Toussaint. The World Bank provided loans to developing countries only with higher interest rates, and the World Bank gave only a short period of time for the repayment of the loans. And the World Bank provided often loans only for most profitable projects, just like other commercial banks. The funds for World Bank lending is mainly derived from securities issued in the financial markets. And the World Bank profited enormously. The World Bank made billions of dollars a year at the expense of developing countries. In 1970s, the debt levels of developing countries soared to an enormous level. This was mainly because of the terms of the loans were favorable at that time, because borrowing by developing countries were encouraged by World Bank and the private banks of developed countries. But a drastic change occurred in 1979 when the US Federal Reserve increased its interest rates. The rise in interest rates combined with the fall in the commodity prices turned things completely negatively against developing countries. Poorer countries were hugely affected because of this, and the lenders made huge profits in the 1980s. Since 1997, Southeast Asian and Korean financial crisis, the net financial transfers have been rising from the developing countries to the developed countries. And at the same time, the debt levels of the developing countries also increased to an unprecedented levels. Between the period 1982 and 1988, the public debt levels increased by more than 100%. That is from $442 billion to $932 billion. But at the same time, the private sector's external debt levels have got declined. It is because the capitalists are bailed out by the governments of the respective countries. The burden of repaying their loans fell upon the state. After 1985, the net transfer of credit was consistently negative, except in the year 1993. Over a period of 20 years, a total of $471 billion in public finances flowed from developing countries to developed countries through negative transfers. Between 2000 and 2004, the negative exchange has again increased. The volume of this negative exchange totaled to $291 billion. That means it is equivalent to 3 times Marshall Plan's amount. This has been transferred from developing countries to developed countries in just 5 years. Although the developing countries have consistently repaid large amounts of debt, their total debt level has not declined but further increased because they caught up in this vicious cycle. Soviet Russia gave loans to other countries with a lower interest rate comparing to the West. As early as 1960, the World Bank began to see the danger of debt crisis coming. But many debtor countries find difficulty in repaying their loans. Warning signs increased until 1973 oil crisis. The World Bank leaders, private bankers, Pearson Committee and the US General Accounting Office all issued warnings about risk of a crisis in reports. But in 1973, the price of petroleum began to rise, and the large number of petrodollars in the banks of industrialized countries are recycled by business circles. Thereafter, there was a serious change in the tone of the World Bank. The World Bank was not talking about the crisis. What the World Bank did was it competed with the commercial banks in lending more, but the debt levels were already skyrocketed until the debt crisis broke in 1982. The World Bank engaged in dual practice. In official documents, the World Bank says there is no need to worry, it is just a short-term issue. But behind the doors, it says that if the banks saw the risk of crisis, if they stop lending, then a number of countries will be hugely affected, it says. The World Bank recommended developing countries to take more debt. For repaying the old debt, they were asked to get new loans, and they were caught up in this vicious cycle, and because of that, their debt levels further increased. Third world debt repayments increased by 18% in 1970 and 20% in 1971. Since 1960s, the average rate of debt growth has been almost twice the rate of growth of export earnings of the developing countries. That makes the debt servicing very problematic. After Second World War, the defaults of the least developed countries generally did not cause large losses to lending banks. Their loans were restructured. When loans are restructured, the interest rate is usually increased, making the cost of the loan much higher than the actual loan value. And new conditions were imposed. Banks asked the developing countries to enter into agreement with the International Monetary Fund and implement the austerity policies. The World Bank provided loans to developing countries with the condition that they should be used for purchasing products, goods and services from the developed countries. Thus, the money the South borrowed flowed back to the North. In the World Bank's first 17 years, 93% of the money it lent each year went back to industrialized countries in the form of purchases. The data for this was provided by the World Bank until 1962. Since then, this type of data was not being made public. Why? Because until 1962, the rich countries which had most influence in the World Bank were happy to show that the money the World Bank lent them came back immediately, and they were proud to demonstrate that the World Bank lending was a profitable business. But as time went on, more and more independent colonial countries joined the World Bank, so it was embarrassing to show the World Bank's profitable business in its annual report. The United States cancelled the loans of some of its allies. The most obvious example of this was in 1953, the Treaty of London, which cancelled Germany's debt. In order to stabilize the economy of the West, the US-led Creditor Alliance made huge concessions to Germany, hoping that it will stabilize the economy of the Atlantic region. They gave concessions to the Germany's big corporation, but developing countries were not treated the way the West Germany was treated. West Germany was asked not to repay more than 1/12 or 5% of its export earnings for loan repayment. In fact, Germany never used more than 4.2% of its export earnings to repay its debts. In 2004, developing countries had to spend an average of 12.5% of their export earnings on debt services, 8.7% in Sub-Saharan Africa, and 20% in Latin America and Caribbean. This was over 20% by the end of 1990s. Germany was allowed to use its own national currency to repay its foreign debt, but no third world country was given such a concession. They were not allowed to use their own currency to repay the debt. The London Credit Agreement allowed Germany to manufacture domestically the goods they import. In contrast, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund prevented developing countries from manufacturing domestically the product they import. Developing countries were not given the possibility to renegotiate the loan agreements, but the London Credit Agreement to Germany provided for a moratorium relief if they were not able to repay the loan because of dwindling resources. No such provision was made for developing countries in loan agreements. From all this, it is clear that developing countries were not treated in the way the West treated the Germany concessions, and the West make sure that the developing countries are not freed from debt and totally caught up in the debt crisis. In 2005 July in Ecuador, the government decided to reform the use of oil resources. So it decided that a part of it can be used for repayment and the rest can be used for funding social projects. This honored the World Bank and it withheld a $100 million loan to Ecuador. And the Finance Minister Rafael Correa said that this is a crime against Ecuador. And he said that no one has a right to be punishing a country for changing its own laws. Ecuador then looked for funding elsewhere. The president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, came forward to support Ecuador's efforts and offered $300 million to Ecuador, and Ecuador also received funding from China. So the increased pressure from the Washington resulted in the dismissal of its finance minister Rafael Correa. The World Bank always recommended the developing countries to take more foreign debt and attract foreign investment for progress. The World Bank's idea of borrowing from developed countries to buy even basic equipment and consumer goods has failed to make any progress or development in developing countries. Developing countries are made to depend heavily on foreign loans, and the developed countries and World Bank consider loans as a powerful means of exerting control over developing countries, debtor countries. Therefore, the actions of the World Bank cannot be regarded as errors or a result of a bad management. They are part of a theoretical plan that is deliberately, carefully thought out and implemented. This is what is taught in most universities, and it has been stuffed into hundreds of books on development economics. The World Bank has developed its own theory for development, but when the facts and data undermine the theory, the bank will not question its theory, but rather it will twist the facts to defend its theory. American economist Cheryl Bayer, a critic of the IMF and the World Bank, in a book published in 1974, listed the measures the IMF imposed on developing countries to provide its services. They are as follows: abolition of restriction on imports and liberalization in developing economies, and currency devaluation, and they have been asked to implement monetary policies to control inflation, and they have to raise interest rates and increase their foreign exchange reserves, and they have been asked to reduce the fiscal deficit and reduce the government spending for important social sector expenditures, and they have been asked to increase the taxes and fees for the public services, and they have been asked to eliminate subsidies on consumer goods. Developing countries were asked to cap the salary increment in public services and removal of price controls, and they have been asked to welcome foreign investment. This is to be continued in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.